Man, this game is so incredible. What an incredible story moment. What a great payoff, great soundtrack, and just such a fun combat. I can't believe such a great game was made and I'm only playing it now. It's genuinely so incredible. I really can't wait to play for...
I am not crazy! I am not crazy.
Seriously, I just can't see this. Especially the recent 2 years have been incredible for gaming. I have discovered so many new incredible games, had so much fun, and I'm just not really sure, why do people feel like this? Maybe we should start with the question, what even is a great video game? Now, of course, this is definitely something that varies for everyone. For me, a video game is a magical world or a place that is just not imaginable in the real world. Or just a very realistic and believable setting. It's a place I can immerse myself in. A game is an experience that challenges me and pushes me to my limit, first seeming like an incredibly tall wall that I could never beat, and later mastering it to perfection. Or a video game is an incredible story, accompanied with beautiful music that just fits the story or the world. But most importantly, I think a video game triggers all the emotions. Anger, happiness, sadness, you name it. And I believe that old games and new games really aren't that different in this regard. I think they might be even more similar than you think. Now, the question is, if I personally feel like games are just getting better, and some people feel like games are just getting worse, what really is the issue? Am I or the other people just delusional? Well, let's look into this. Well, some perceive gaming as that, and I think the biggest reason for it is this. Most AAA games just fucking suck. Well, to maybe narrow it down a little, most of the Western, biggest AAA devs just delivered pretty poor products the recent years. What was the last memorable Call of Duty? I was never a real Call of Duty player, but every Call of Duty game that comes out I hear about for like 2 weeks and then it's dead. Assassin's Creed. I played a few Assassin's Creed games, the early ones, and I really enjoyed them, but from the recent ones I hear nothing but complaints and distaste. And then there is Blizzard, which is Blizzard. The issue is, especially the 3 big giant companies are just full of issues. We have EA with their very shady loot box practices and their samey FIFA releases. A lot of people play this, but it's just not a creative game whatsoever. It's the same game every year, pretty much, and it's just not very interesting. Then of course, we have Ubisoft. Oh, Ubisoft. These guys deliver so many games and none of them seem to really stand out. Besides one exception we will talk about later. But I think Ubisoft is very capable of creating great products. The issue is just they are very money greedy and I feel like they will just spam release after release for the quick bucks. But especially recently that has not been working out and they actually might be bought by Tencent, which is crazy. And then of course, Blizzard, Activision Blizzard. What can I even say? Between disappointing game releases, to not delivering on promises, to stealing breast milk, there is everything this company has gone through. And even more dark stuff like harassment at the workplace. It's just a really rough ride for Blizzard the last years. So I understand the issue. Do I think gaming in general is getting worse? No, not at all. Quite the opposite. However, do I understand why someone who mostly plays games released by these companies thinks gaming is getting worse? Yeah, I completely understand. It's a very understandable opinion to have because especially these big game devs have really been on a decline. But while here, I want to remind you, this is not everything gaming has to offer. I think there are some incredibly important alternatives and I'm going to present them now. Of course, there are a lot of games out there by now. And one very big branch a lot of people sadly forget nowadays are the indie games, which in my opinion are probably the best alternative to big AAA releases. Indie studios love to go for very creative and unique releases. They experiment and try around a lot of stuff, and they are also less limited in their art style, I find. Like, the things you find in some of these games, art style wise, is just incredible. And most importantly, maybe for some, they are a very cheap alternative. Like, look at this price. Getting Hollow Knight this cheap, even on sale, is just incredible. The game would easily be worth $60 in my opinion. And I just want to present some indie games I really love because I think everyone should try out these games. There is The Binding of Isaac, which is the best roguelike I've ever seen in my opinion. I may or may have not played a little bit of this game and it still doesn't get boring. It's just such a fun game and there is so much content, insanely replayable as well. Then there is Hollow Knight. Of course, this is pretty popular and there are also the Silksong memes because we are all waiting for the sequel. But Hollow Knight is just an incredible Metroidvania by Team Cherry. It's an unforgettable experience with some of the coolest moments and just incredible stuff. For example, first entering Green Path, the second main area of the game. Absolutely magical and unforgettable moment. Then there is Celeste, which is a stunning platformer with a very memorable soundtrack and an incredible story. Just a fantastic game. And let's just mention Cuphead because it's just once again an incredible game with an incredibly memorable and iconic art style and a super great soundtrack. Also, all the bosses there are really good, so you will not find any bad content in Cuphead. And then there's the fact that even games like Minecraft started this at the indie game. Minecraft, probably the biggest game by now, started as an indie game. So it's really important to give these a chance because I would actually say indie games are definitely some of the gems in gaming. Indie games are something you can always just try because of the really low price, as I said. And I'm really excited to eventually play Crown Sworn when it releases and Nine Souls once I finish Final Fantasy 16. So there's just a lot for me ahead. And with that said, please give indie games a chance. There is just so much stuff to try out. Why always spend time on frustrating companies you're done with that have disappointed you for years? Try something new. That's what I want to recommend. Yes indeed, there are a lot of very good AAA games as well. You just have to know where to look. Let's start with the very obvious. Anything From Software releases is just absolutely incredible in my opinion. They are my favorite video game company by far and I love everything they release. Just this year they released Shadow of the Erdtree, my favorite piece of video game content of all time. Absolutely incredible in every regard and just so fun. Even has my favorite boss ever, Mesmer, who is just an absolute highlight in gaming for me. But not only From Software can provide very good stuff. Now even China releases great games apparently. This year's release, Black Myth Wukong, is absolutely fantastic. It's such a cool adaptation of the classical series Journey to the West. Absolutely thrilling world, awesome characters, amazing twists and storytelling, fantastic combat and great boss encounters. Absolutely adored this game and it surprised me more than once. Oh yeah, the recently added Gauntlet update is also just straight fire. Absolutely incredible stuff. Love it. Amazing game, wholeheartedly recommend. And then the game I'm currently playing, Final Fantasy 16, a AAA game by Square Enix. I have not played any Final Fantasy game before and the reason is I'm not that much into the type of games the Final Fantasy games usually are, but Final Fantasy 16 is a very fun action game with a fantastic combat system, but most importantly, especially on my first run where I'm right now, the story. The story is gripping, fascinating and just so fun. I love all the characters, some of the coolest twists, some of the most emotional moments, and did I mention that the characters are just fucking incredible? Oh yeah, the bosses. The bosses are also just amazing. Some of the best presentation I've seen in gaming. I can't wait to see the DLCs and the end game of this wonderful, wonderful experience. Final Fantasy 16, absolute W. Love this game a lot. And now you maybe say, alright, Asian devs are great, but what about Western devs? They suck, right? Well, what about last game's winner, Larian Studio with Baldur's Gate 3? They're an EU studio and they released one of the best rated games of all time. I personally didn't play Baldur's Gate. I don't know if I ever will because I'm not entirely sure about the gameplay, but from what I've seen, this game is absolutely stunning on every level, so that's like a Western game all-timer. But what's maybe really shocking is after dunking on them for like the entire video, Ubisoft came around this year and released Prince of Persia Lost Crown. Yes, I agree, quite a departure from the original games, but one of my favorite games of all time. A fantastic Metroidvania with a super impressive world, incredible platforming, and some of the coolest 2D bosses I've ever seen. Absolutely fantastic stuff, and I would absolutely recommend everyone to try this game if possible. It's so good. And this is the thing. There are a lot of good AAA games, you just have to know where to look at. Yeah, the giants I mentioned before definitely have fallen off quite a bit, but there are so many other AAA studios that release quality content, and I would recommend sticking to those and some great indie games, and you will have so much stuff to play. Let's not beat around the bush. I don't think gaming is perfect, and I think everyone would agree. And I want to talk about some of the modern problems gaming has. So let's start with the number one. Releasing half-baked games definitely needed more time in the oven and later patching them up with updates. Sure, it's better than just not patching them at all, but I still think it's a very scummy practice and I really don't like it, and I'm glad people harshly criticize it. Because I think if a game releases, it should be a finished product, not really a hot take if you ask me. Then of course, some very scummy prying tactics like some of the loot boxes, the soulless battle pass in every game, and just microtransactions. I really hate seeing microtransactions in full-priced games. That's just absolutely shit. I don't think the whole skin and battle pass stuff, especially in free-to-play games, is as egregious, but I still think it's a bit of a soulless thing. Talking about soulless, some of the companies I mentioned, the way they pump out product after product without any soul, just some slop so everyone can have a game to play for a few weeks and then hop off, it's also very disappointing. And this is the perspective I can't really see because I'm not really playing PvP games myself, but I think the PvP community has it really tough in gaming, and I wouldn't be surprised if they really don't enjoy gaming as much, because from what I hear, usually PvP games are mostly not in such a great state. But as I said, I can't really talk on this too much, so maybe tell me about this in the comments. I would actually be very interested. And one last thing I need to mention is the woke gaming stuff. I think most of it is quite a lot of bullshit, but I think there are some instances where it's actually true, like here.
Thank you. So, I'm non-binary. What does that mean? It means I don't feel like a man or a woman.
If you are neither a man nor a woman, then what are you?
Non-binary. I just said, and I'm going to use they instead of she from now on.
Like, I have zero issues with representing a non-binary character in a game. Completely fine, like, why shouldn't you? But then just make it an accurate representation and not just some cringy dialogue that is not subtle at all. It just seems like completely useless political virtue signaling, but as a wise master once said, so I think I'm going to keep it at that because I don't really want to go into some weird political drama thingy. But overall, I think a lot of grifters and people who like to stir up unnecessary drama really just use this to create their false narrative, and it's really annoying. People like Synthetic Man and Endymion TV, in my opinion, are just rage baiting, cloud chasing, content creating grifters, and I really dislike their content so much. They bring so much negativity and nothing of value. Really dislike these guys. But overall, I think despite these problems, which definitely deserve attention, and I would really appreciate if we work towards a betterment in this, despite all of this, I still think overall the positives far outweigh the negatives. So, how do we end this incredibly complex topic talking about video games and in general the quality of video games in modern times? I just think there's nothing more fitting than a personal opinion of mine. And in my opinion, I don't think gaming has gotten worse. Honestly, quite the opposite. I think if anything, gaming overall in general is advancing. There are so many titles to discover, and especially if you get into gaming now, you can play so many quality games and not run out of content. It's so amazing. However, I think there are definitely some issues with modern day gaming, especially the big Western giant companies that definitely delivered quite a bit of slob recently. It's definitely leaving a mark on the industry, and you definitely can feel it. Then of course some of the shady practices mentioned, it's just really not nice, and while some games maybe need skins to sustain themselves, I just think some of the games definitely go overboard with this. And as I mentioned, I haven't talked too much about PvP stuff because I really can't comment on it, but from what I've heard from a lot of people who play PvP games, these games are mostly not in a great state. But besides that, on what I can comment is the games I play and the games I choose that come out now are genuinely all incredible. I personally would recommend you to maybe listen to your content creators who you enjoy, ask around, and maybe just look around in your niche genre or something, or quite the opposite, maybe branch out and try a few different genre. I think it's not the matter if there are games, but where you look. A few other reasons why you maybe not enjoy gaming as much anymore is that you maybe just grew tired of it. Maybe you just don't enjoy it as a hobby anymore, and that's completely fine. There is so much other stuff to do. You can be drawing, you can be editing videos, you can be doing some sports, you can play an instrument. The possibilities are endless. And just because you don't enjoy gaming anymore doesn't mean gaming has gotten worse. This is a case for a lot of the people who say Minecraft has gotten worse or is dying. I personally don't think the game has gotten really worse. Sure, Mojang definitely screwed up a few times, not denying that, but the game is still very solid, and if anything you could play the old versions or the millions of mods. So I don't think it's really an issue with Minecraft. But with that said, there's nothing wrong with enjoying gaming less. Try different hobbies, try different game genre, just do what makes you happy, because that's what it really comes down to. Emotions, positive emotions most of the time. This is what a good video game really should strive for and trigger, and I don't really feel like I'm having less of it. If anything, I think it's just getting better and better. And with this conclusion, thank you so much for watching this video. It's a very important video to me, and I really hope you enjoyed it. And with this, I'm signing out.